All right, hey guys, I am just trying this out. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I'm just going to record this and see if it will work so I can just send it to you. But I'm going to talk through the worksheet that is called Close Reading and Annotating in order to identify theme. You have that in an email and you can print that out. What I'm going to talk through now is going to help you guys as you are annotating and reading through to track things for theme. We've talked about it in general about noting things and marking places that are interesting to you. But these are some specifics. So I'm going to talk through this worksheet. So you should have the worksheet in front of you, and we're just going to talk it through just like we do in class. So we've already talked about how when an author writes a book, they are writing in order to do something, to convey a message. Very rarely is an author going to write a book just for the heck of it. There is some theme or some message that they want to convey to their audience. And when they do that, they have to figure out ways to convey that theme. It's not something they just throw in. They're going to use tools across their entire work of their book in order to capture that theme. And if you look in the first paragraph that has bullet points, you're going to note some things that are very familiar to you. Some of the tools that authors are going to use are going to be character development, setting, plot, conflict. Those should all be very familiar to you guys. Also mood, point of view, figurative language, symbolism. There's lots of other things that are going to be used, but those are the most common. So what to note when you are annotating and looking to make notes in your book or on paper are some of the things we're going to talk about now. So looking at the tools specifically that the writer uses to capture their theme is a key part in figuring out places that theme is important. So what we're going to stop and talk about is some of the main points of literary analysis that we've already talked about. And so you'll note that in that next bulleted section. So you're going to look as you read to observe how the tools of literary analysis that we've already talked about are being used. So the first one under those bullet points is noting how characters develop. So I want you to think back to Tom Sawyer. Think back to when you were making a character map of Tom. You were noting instances in the Adventures of Tom Sawyer where his character was shown, and you were noting instances where his character was revealed through dialogue, through thoughts, through the reactions of others. Think back to that chart. And by doing that, you were able to see, did his character develop or did it not develop? You also did a character web that connected characters, major, minor, flat, round. So think of all of those things with the idea of looking at how is the author using these things in order to help further his or her theme. Next one is plot. So plot we've worked on since the beginning. We've worked on plot charts. We've worked on developing our inciting incident, reaching that climax, seeing how things are resolved. So some of the things you can note with plot, what is that climax? Is there a ton of resolution? Does the author spend a lot of time talking about how things pan out? Does the author only give a little bit of explanation regarding how things work together in that area? So just note some different aspects of plot and see potentially is the author using plot in a way that would allow him or her to express their theme. Next two are setting and conflict, which should be pretty fresh in your mind since you guys just finished your big paper on setting and conflict. And you're going to look at issues of setting. Why did the author put this setting here? Does it have something to do with the theme they're trying to convey? Why is this aspect of setting repeated over and over? And again, if we think of the Scarlet Letter, we think of the sunlight and the bright gold reflections. And why was that repeated over and over? Was that instance of setting in order to convey an aspect of theme? And then also conflict. Conflict we know has to be in a story. Why is the author presenting the conflict the way that they are? Why is it maybe taking a long time to develop this particular conflict? Why is it maybe this conflict doesn't seem to be resolved very quickly? Why does this conflict overlap with that conflict? Who is involved in more than one conflict? And if asking all those questions then goes back to allow you to say, are any of these conflicts written in a certain way that are trying to move a theme forward in the book? So then you're going to come down, and as you identify each of those things, it's kind of repetitive, but you're going to look at how those things relate to one another. And we talked a little bit about this in setting, but we'll refresh again here. Do the conflicts become greater because of the setting? We talked about that a lot with Scarlet Letter. If the Scarlet Letter has been set today or in a different time period or a different culture, would the conflicts have been the same? And would the themes that emerge from that book have been the same? Another question, does a character's development or lack of development have to do with a conflict? So how are these things related? Is because this character's in this conflict, does their personal character grow? And if so, do they learn something about the theme that's presented in the book? Another thing you can look at is how the plot is structured. Again, is there a ton of resolution or is there a small amount of resolution? We talked a little bit about this with Scarlet Letter, the way that Hawthorne chose to address the resolution was interesting because he didn't say this is exactly what happened. He gave a ton of different options. And so what did that contribute to the theme? Was he able to leave things more wide open for you to make a call about theme? So those are all things to consider. All right, so moving on, the bottom portion of the first page and the whole second page talk specifically about some key things you can do in order to annotate and to be thinking critically about theme while you are reading. And the title of this paper is Close Reading, and that just means paying attention while you're reading and annotating. So an example that some people give are for careful reading or close reading is the idea of a scientist. So a scientist is going to have a hypothesis. You know, you always walk into an experiment with a hypothesis that you're trying to prove or disprove. So it can be thought a lot the same with literary analysis. You can have an idea for theme, something you're gradually discovering, but as a scientist would examine the specimen to find the proof for their hypothesis, you're going to be examining your text in order to find the proof that you need to back up the theme that you have. So you're going to follow these tips that come on these next pages as you're reading and taking notes. And remember, we talked about don't just stick a tab on your spot. You want to be writing a note in your book or on a piece of paper that will help you to understand what you're noting. So there's two categories of things you're going to write down. The first one is objective facts, and objective facts are just raw data. They're the things that everybody can see when they read the book. We could all agree that there was a scene where Dimmesdale met Hester and Pearl on the scaffolding in the middle of the night. We can all agree on that. There was a scene. Now, we all might have different takes on what happened and the why, but we can all agree on the objective facts. And so those are the who, the what, the when, the where, the actual details of what happens in those scenes in the book. You're going to note keywords and phrases that are interesting, things that just jump out at you, passages that are meaningful. You might read something and just, wow, that seems significant or important, and so you're going to note it. Another thing we've talked about is just noting unfamiliar words, or also words that are maybe not unfamiliar but used in a different way, and then asking yourself, which we're going to get onto, why are they used that way? You're also going to look at phrases that stand out to you that might have purpose beyond what they mean on the surface. And one example, obviously, from this book is the title of the book. To Kill a Mockingbird, if you talked about that outside of a literary circle, maybe a hunting thing, could just be something to do with birds. But obviously, there's deeper meaning to that title based on this story. So you're going to also note character dialogue and summary details that are important also any literary devices that are used by the author. So those are just the fact collection. Those are the things that are interesting, that stand out, that if you're tracking education as one of the themes, you see a point of education, and so you're going to mark it down. So it's just objective, things that we can all agree on and see were in the book. The second thing that you're going to pay attention to and record are subjective information. Now, obviously, the word subjective means it's changeable. I might have a view of one thing that's different than your view of something. We all agree that the three met on the scaffold, but I might see a different why to their meeting, or I might ask a different question in response to their meeting. So this subjective information is your personal thoughts and emotional responses that come as you're reading and recording the details of the story. And remember, they will not always be shared by everyone who sees them or records them. So basically, they're the how and the why of what you're reading. They're going to be the thoughtful things. Well, gosh, I think this. I feel this. I know this. They're the things that come as you're reading. They're going to be the things that you are experiencing as you read. They're the thoughts and questions that you start asking as you're reading. They're going to be the things that start to help you make those connections that you need to down the road. Remember, we've talked about this before in class, writing down a question while you read, even when you don't have the answer to what you are asking, is a very valuable step, because you are way more likely to find an answer to a question that you've asked and noted and paused to ask in your recording of your information than you are to find an answer to a question that you haven't stopped to ask. You might think it quickly, but if you take the time to write down that unanswered question, why did Dimmesdale pause on the scaffolding? Why wouldn't Pearl acknowledge him? What was she holding back? So you might not have the answers to those questions at the moment, but you log it as something that you're going to then look for, and it'll jog your memory later on as you find answers. So ask questions as you read. And then the next part is just some examples of some really good how and why questions that you can be asking yourself as you read. So the blanks obviously are going to be filled in with the things that you encounter in the text, but some examples. So this one says, why did the character always do blank? So a question you could ask there, why did Pearl always resist Dimmesdale? Why did Mistress Gibbons always point out Hester, or always point out Dimmesdale? So different questions you can ask. Why did that always happen? What's the reason behind it? And obviously we're trying to tie all these questions in with theme. Is there a theme or something the author is trying to say by this repeated appearance of the Mistress Gibbons, who we know nothing about except that people thought she was a witch? What is he trying to convey by having that character appear over and over? Again, here's a question about setting. How does whatever setting relate to the inner qualities of a character? The very sparse setting that we saw in the town of matched the character traits of many of the people from the town. However, we had the setting of the forest, and you guys, a lot of you commented on that in your paper. How does that setting match the inner qualities of Hester or Dimmesdale or Pearl, and why was that important? Was that conveying a theme? Just simple things. Why is this answer important? Why is this aspect important? A simple question to ask, what is the significance of blank? The example here is the open window. Okay, why is that open window mentioned over and over again? We talked thoroughly in the Scarlet Letter, what is the significance of the A? It was, the physical A, how Pearl was like the A. We talked a lot about what is the significance of that symbol. And then also to take that further, how is the blank helping to express the idea of blank? So how is Pearl helping to express the idea of Hester's punishment, or Hester's self-inflicted punishment? So what other details are working with the blank? What other details are working with the letter to help develop this theme. So we saw the letter reflected in the armor, we saw Pearl, we saw the red rose grow outside of the jail, and we saw a lot of things that Hawthorne worked together to develop his themes. Some good questions just in general to ask: if this happened, well then why did that happen? How are they connected? Again, connection. Looking for elements that repeat. Why are those repetitions noteworthy? And do similarities exist between characters? Are there any characters that, though they might seem different on the surface, they're really very similar? You know, we noted some similarities between Chillingsworth and Dimmesdale, though they seem to be expressing things very differently. They both had suffered loss. They both potentially loved Hester. That was an argument we had, though their love looked really different. They both were grieving a life that they couldn't have anymore. So we saw some similarities there, even though on the surface things looked really different. So look at some similarities, and then how would those similarities and the way that they play out in those characters develop a unified theme? What theme can come from that? You know, how Dimmesdale and Chillingsworth both responded in very different ways could go with the theme of loss. You know, here's a theme, loss, or a topic of loss, and your theme could turn into, you know, the tracking of loss through the loss of a relationship, something like that in a deeper way, better worded than I just said it. But looking at how the two different people handle something similar can help you see this overall theme. And then the last thing I want to say about all of that is it's going to be really important that you don't only record the objective factual parts or only record the subjective thoughtful thinking parts. And what I want you to think about is just diving in the ocean. So up on the surface is where all those objective facts are. Everybody can see them. You look out across the ocean and everybody sees the same thing. So we can see them meeting at the scaffolding. We can see the details of the scarlet letter. We can see how the rose bush was red. We can read about the details of the forest. Those are all of the things that we can agree on. They are facts that we're gathering. Okay, so they're surface. They're really good and we need them, right? We absolutely need to have them. We also need to have what's down in the depth. So to get to these deeper things, imagine going down into the water. These are the subjective things. These are the things you have to work a little harder to get. Ask yourselves questions. Well, why? You know, why did this happen? How did the red repeating through the story help to show us this theme? That's that deeper part. So what I want to say to you is you can't stay at the surface because all you will have is facts. You'll have no conclusions, nothing you're able to say from that. So if you only stop at collecting facts, you'll have a very shallow, moving forward in your paper. You won't have anything to say that is connecting them, that is creating them into a bigger theme. On the other hand, if you stay only in that deeper part, only in the subjective, thoughtful part, all you will have is your opinions. So you will be stating things that might be deep and powerful, but if you stay in that deep part, you won't have the facts that you need from the surface to tie it together to make it a strong opinion. So those two things have to work together. You have to take your facts from the surface and combine them together to create these beautiful, deep, and meaningful thoughts. So work them together. Make sure you don't just get facts. Don't just stay in this realm of I think, I feel, I wonder. Ask the questions, take the facts, bring them together to make a strong opinion that is backed up with proof. Okay, that's all I have for now. Sorry, I have no idea where to look on one of these things. So if I actually send this to you, I apologize because I'm mostly just looking at myself, but that's probably going to look funny once you guys watch this. If you have any questions, please email me, call me, text me, and we'll see how we keep moving forward. Thanks, guys.